Welcome to the IoT Leaders podcast. Today we're going to Romania and we're going to be talking about three subjects actually. One is smart labels, which we've talked about before on the pod. We're going to be talking about the ROI for smart cities and how it really works. And that's what municipalities are really doing with IoT. And then towards the end of this one, very interesting discussion on how AI is totally transforming how people look at IoT, and even to the point of saying, is the true purpose of IoT different to what we thought a little while ago? Is its true purpose really to get the data to train the AI models? And my guest who's going to go through all of that is Silviu Negina. As I say, he's in Bucharest, but he actually works out of Paris. So he's another one of these crazy guys who flies to work. And also in the past, interesting background, he was playing tennis professionally at a pretty high level when he was younger. Experiencing guy. I think you'll enjoy the conversation with him. He's got a lot of ideas about IoT and what's real and what's not real. And they are pushing the AI models pretty heavily at his company, his current company called VisioSense. So here it is. Enjoy. Silviu, welcome to the IoT Leaders podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Thanks a lot.
You're very welcome. And I think you're the first guest that we've had on from Eastern Europe, but I believe you are in Romania. Is that right?
Yes, I am based in Bucharest in Romania, but traveling pretty often to Western European countries where I have my teams and my customers.
Okay. So let's first of all delve into you and your background and the reason why you're traveling to Paris a lot, because you have an interesting background from our initial chat before this recording in terms of your experience with IoT. We'll get into what you're doing now, but maybe you could just give the listeners just a quick thumbnail sketch of the companies that you've worked for, your experience in IoT.
Yes, thanks. So I started working 20 years ago, mainly I started in telecom industry for Orange. And then I moved to my preferred topic, to the IoT. And I started working 13 years ago in the IoT industry for Orange, then moved to Sigfox, then to LinkSense. And nowadays I'm working for VisioSense, an edge AI company.
Okay. And we're going to talk about LinkSense because they're in the smart label field. And we'll also talk quite a bit about your current company, VisioSense. Actually, before I do, maybe I can just ask you, Sigfox is an interesting company. Certainly a lot of our European listeners will know quite a bit about Sigfox. What's your take on, it was a fantastic idea. What's your take on the advantages of Sigfox and where they are as I say a company, it's a collection of companies really, but what's your take on Sigfox before we get into the other stuff?
For me, Sigfox was the new kid on the block. And I think it was the technology that started to ramp up the IoT with real numbers. So I'm excluding now all the analyst estimations and all the billions of devices that were supposed to be active. So I think Sigfox as a technology helped a lot the whole IoT industry grow. I don't know exactly where the company is today since it was acquired by Unabiz. Of course, I'm still somehow emotionally attached to Sigfox. But overall, I'm emotionally attached to all the IoT industry. But regarding Sigfox, I think it started with a huge ambition. It didn't turn out that great in terms of reality versus all the forecasts, just because I think it's a little bit complicated to align more than 80 Sigfox operators that are managing every operation in a country and make them all think the same, have the same strategy and scale the technology at the highest level. And I think that Sigfox faced the insolvency issues in an era very close to the pandemic. And I think it was not the right moment for the IoT industry and for everyone at that stage. But overall, I think it's a great technology. It's a great company. And I hope the technology will scale even further. And all the Sigfox operator will keep doing a great job because I think the IoT industry does not need technologies that are disappearing. It needs technologies that are staying alive and scaling and reaching the billions of devices that we all dream about.
Potential that we've talked a lot about on the IoT Leaders, and we're going to get into that. And by the way, it's remiss of me because I do know something else about you. which I didn't mention during the intro. I think you're also our first guest. We've had over 50, getting on to 60 guests on IoT leaders. But I think you're our first guest who could lay claim to, at one point, be made their living from playing tennis. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, it's my first love. I've been playing, I could call it professional tennis at junior level
All
when I
right.
was a kid in Romania. Unfortunately, back then in the 90s, at one moment I needed to choose between school and sport. And
Okay.
it was an obvious choice, but I love playing tennis. I play even nowadays, I play tennis in a semi-pro tournament with people around my age. I'm a very competitive person, both in the personal life and in the professional life. And it's a sport that I really love. One of my idols is Roger Federer from the tennis world.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yes, I played a lot of tennis when I was young, and I encourage everyone that has kids to push them to professional sport, no matter what is the sport, because I think it only brings benefits for everyone.
I'm sure we could talk a lot about tennis, and I have had the privilege of seeing Federer play live a few times. And so we need to talk about IoT, not about, but I always say he didn't have a racket, he had a wand. It was just magic, what he could do. But anyway, let's get back to IoT. So let's start off. Why don't we start off on LinkSense? Let's do it in chronological order. I mentioned earlier LinkSense in the smart label business. What's your take on smart label? Is a hot subject. People have been talking about massive IoT. You mentioned that the forecasts that were put up, the billions you said that were missed. A famous quote, I've referred to it many times, is that there was going to be 20 billion things connected, and there were only 11 in the timescale that we said. Sorry, 50 billion things, and there was only 11. So classic Pareto. But actually, when it came to smart label, you're talking massive IoT, 500 billion things, a trillion things, the ability to track everything at a much lower level. And so what's your take on where smart label is right now and where it will be in the future?
I think the smart labels nowadays are at the same stage like the whole IoT industry. People are focusing a lot on the technology that is being used, and there are many players that are not fighting, but anyway claiming somehow that the technology that they are using is the best. When we talk about smart labels, for me, I think there are two major categories. Is the one that has really scaled up, and we talk about billions of labels per year, the ones that are connected by RFID and or NFC, depending on what use case we are talking about, but mostly about RFID. And here there are some major names that are public already, so I'm not disclosing any sensitive information, like Decathlon, that is connecting all their assets in all their stores. In Romania, we have all the stores where you just purchase the products, you just put them in a small box, and then the invoice is automatically generated, and you just pay with a card, and that's it.
So let's just double click on that. That's really interesting. So are you saying that you go into the Decathlon, the big retailer,
Yes.
say sporting goods or whatever, you go in, you buy a pair of trainers or something, whatever, you put it in a bag and you leave the store?
Now, I go to the self-checkout. I
Okay.
just put them in a kind of a box that has some RFID antennas inside. When
Okay.
the products there, they are automatically scanned. And then I just click on pay, put my phone, pay with a contactless solution, and then just leave. So this is the technology that scaled a lot the smart labels. There are different people that are not really calling these labels smart labels, but for me, they are smart labels. The moment when you are almost autonomous in a store, that's definitely a smart label. Now, there is also the other area when we talk about active smart labels. And here we talk about Bluetooth Low Energy, we talk about Sigfox, we talk about LoRaWAN labels, and we talk about, let's say, the premium smart labels that are connected by cellular. For me, I think, first of all, in general in IoT and also in smart labels, I think there is no technology that fits all the needs. We as solution providers, the system integrators, the telecom operators, everyone in this industry should stop selling technology. The customers don't really care how they get the data as long as it's at the lowest cost and it provides them the fastest return of investment. So all these stupid fights in the industry about, yeah, Sigfox is better than LoRa, no, LoRa is better than cellular, no, cellular is better. Actually not. There's no technology that is better than the other one. It's only about the availability of a network. Because you have certain countries where you have Sigfox covered completely, You have countries where LoRaWAN has covered most of the country, or at least the urban area. Of course, you have the telecom operators that did a good job so far in the industry. My take is that they could have done a much better job, but that's a separate topic. And you have all these technologies. So I think it's about the type of good that you want to connect, the return of investment calculator that you provide to your customer and your partner, and then and only at that moment you choose the technology. Because when we talk about smart labels, we talk about, of course, non-lithium batteries. You cannot put a label that is disposable and works for 1 week or 2 weeks and put a lithium battery. We all talk about saving the planet and reducing the CO2 footprint. You definitely cannot put lithium there. Of course, you end up in a situation where everybody wants to save the planet until they see the cost of it. Because, of course, a non-lithium battery, a printed one, it's much more expensive than a classic coin cell battery. That's why I believe that if we do a consultative sale and not a transactional one, then we pick the right solution for the customers and we are really able to scale the labels. And going back a little bit, one step backwards to your initial question about the labels, I think nowadays it's a matter of who is really able to produce massively a smart label at a very low cost. Here, I think it's still room for improvement from different suppliers.
And I can jump in. We've talked a lot about the inflection point of adoption of all technologies. IoT is just a collection of them, as you point out. It's not a single thing. But there's always for the last 40 plus years, there's been an inflection point of adoption of every product. And price is absolutely a key to the inflection point. What's your take on putting aside the different technologies for different use cases, the point that you're making? But in terms of a smart label on a box or something that moves, you want to track it because you want to look at supply chain, how old it is, especially with food. You've only got a certain amount of time before you have to throw it away. But what is that price point? What is the holy grail of the cost of the label, if you like, that would really encourage massive adoption?
I think the massive adoption of active smart labels will be in mid to long term at the price point of €1. I know it's very low and I know all the industry will hate me for what I'm saying now, but I think €1 will be the price that will help us scale and be able somehow to match the RFID. Because you have an RFID label that in use cases like Decathlon or the big ones in billions, I think it's even less than 1 cent per label, which is almost nothing. It's like the numbers after the comma in Excel. So
yes, it's 100 times. Let's call it 100 times below the target price. But
yes, but on the other hand, you get much more relevant information from an active label that for most of the use cases, it will make sense to pay that €1. Now, depending on the technology, we are pretty far away from that €1. But I think when we will be able to design a device that is less complex in terms of architecture, that is using a very efficient module, it's using a very efficient battery, and the R&D teams, because I think the R&D teams are critical here. And if you have a competent R&D team, you can try to reach those low points in pricing. So you got to anticipate very well, because if a customer says that they want an autonomy of 3 days, 1 day above that is increasing the cost of development for you, definitely. So I think when we will scale massively with active labels, I think will be definitely the €1, give or take, price range. In short to mid-term, I think an inflection point is around 10 to 15 euros.
right.
But then we are able
And
to
it's very
connect
specialist use cases for high value goods.
Yes, I think definitely in pharma and medical. I'm not saying that those are industries where the price is not important, because of course it's important. Every industry is important. When you ship a bunch of drugs for cancer, for example, that are placed in a small box, but the price of them is about €1 million, then I'm sure that 25 euro that is the price today of a cellular label shouldn't have a major impact once you have a full visibility on the whole supply chain. So I think it's important again, and I'm getting back to the consultative sales. let's pick the right device for the right use case, for the right coverage, and only then choose the technology. The technology is just a resource, is a tool, is not something that should be put in front of the customer. Because, and let me give you an example. I've attended a great meeting organized by a partner with some of the biggest names in that industry. I don't want to name the industry because it might be too relevant. But I realized that we attended that meeting trying to present the moon and the sun and the stars. And actually, the guys weren't even using a basic RFID label. They weren't understanding exactly what means to connect the device, an asset that is low cost, that today is being scanned or being written in Excel, the ID. And we were pitching smart labels and shock detection, movement, temperature, and all of that. I think we gotta do a much better job in identifying the customer needs and then build a solution, work with the customer, provide the good price so that it's gonna be a win-win for everyone. Because if you go with huge margins just for the sake of improving your own P&L, nobody will gonna sign for it.
And what you're describing, of course, is, and I talked about the fact that IoT is what we're talking about now, but we could go back 40 years and just talk about sales of mini computers, PCs, laptops, phones, software licenses. It is a consultative sell. And you mentioned the ROI and really getting to the ROI and then mapping onto the technology. Some people would say that in IoT, you have hundreds and hundreds of partners, but a lot of them are just pushing the technology. This is what I have to sell, and this is what you need. So how much of a challenge is it to get to the ROI on the use case? And we'll probably talk about that in terms of your current company when we transition to that. But in terms of smart labels, how difficult is it? And what's your experience of where the ROI is? Because that will determine what you can afford, and that will then determine what technology you can use right now.
I don't want to deliver some theoretical information because I'm always against this approach where we just sell dreams. I'm going to give you a real example from a former discussion that I had. So in the past, I was talking with a major brewer. I think we all like the beer that they are providing.
Yeah,
and we were talking,
okay.
Yeah, for sure. And we were talking about the percentage of loss in their refrigerators. And it was a major issue for them. They were losing some double-digit percentage of their refrigerators year on year. Of course, the first question is, okay, but we are living in 2022, I think it was the year. So we started to do some steps in connecting assets and all of that. So why this issue? And the main issue was that everybody was looking just at the initial cost. We have 1 million assets. Price for 5 years is, I don't know, 50 euros. Wow. So we got to invest 50 million euros. It's huge. No one will approve it. Of course, if you put it like that, 50 million euros, and you go to the board and say, guys, we need 50 million euros to connect some assets that hopefully will improve our business. Everyone will say no. But moving a little bit to the return of investment, I was explaining to them that once you connect an asset like a refrigerator, you gain some benefits. First of all, you see the real-time location of it. In theory, no asset should move unless you give the approval to move it. Secondly, you get the information about the temperature. Okay, for beer, it might be not that critical. We all love beer, but I cannot think about myself that if a beer goes from cold to hot and then back cold, I might not be able to distinguish it. But if we have ice cream, it's a totally different story.
Yeah.
Then, so you monitor location, you monitor temperature. Then if you monitor with the same device, the number of times the door is opened, mainly when we talk about transparent doors, then you could map this information with the sales in that specific store. And then see, maybe the store has put other products in your refrigerator, which is forbidden because that's why you are giving it for free. Maybe there is an issue with your offering or with your merchandising. I don't know, maybe your labels with the pricing are not visible enough so that people need to open the refrigerator. Maybe there is an issue with your pricing. Maybe you are overpricing your beer versus your competitor. So I see all of this as advantages. Now, when you calculate the return of investment, of course, you got to look at the expenses that you have with the people that you need to send on the field. And okay, maybe countries, I don't know, Romania, Croatia, Serbia, Czech Republic. Maybe we talk about small countries, but look at Spain, look at France, look at Germany. These are very big countries. In order to send someone to check every refrigerator from time to time, like a merchandiser or any other role, you have huge expenses. And it's not just about the person, the salary and the benefits and all of that. You got to provide a car. You have expenses associated with that. So it's a huge expense. So once you calculate all of these benefits and you see what can you save from this, then maybe those tens of millions of euros that will be the cost for all the 5 years, maybe it won't be that much. But you need to look at it from a very constructive perspective and calculate to the customer this return of investment. And then you will see that it's not an easy decision because no sales is easy nowadays, mainly in IoT. We talk about a long life cycle. But still, the customer will understand why he needs to pay something and will understand the real benefits, and you will put there a figure. In my activity, you are asking about labels, both at LinkSense and also nowadays at VisioSense. I have built return of investment calculators for the customer. Of course, you gotta do a deep dive into that specific context, but I'm trying to show them from the first meetings based on some basic information that I get from them. Guys, look, this would be an approximate return of investment for you if you decide to work with us. So I think that's where the difference should come from as a solution provider, system integrator, however you want to put your company. I think that's the value.
And we agree. And I'm going to now transition to VisioSense because it's a very interesting company, the company that you now are. But actually, just for yourself, but primarily for listeners, in fact, viewers, I think about 10% of people watch the YouTube version of this. We have, coincidentally, we have just released as SI a white paper on how to get to the ROI of IoT for exactly the same reasons as you said, because a lot of people who are buying connectivity are saying the cost per megabyte is this or whatever. And of course, with data prices collapsing for IoT by about 15% a year and have done for about 6 years. If you Google gigabytes of IoT data the last 6 years, you see an almost perfect straight line. And the idea of saying it's all about the cost of data, which a lot of requests come down to, how much is your data? How much is your data? Then actually data is a tiny percentage of the cost of the project. And I'll just use one quick example before I get onto VisioSense. In our case, I'll share an example with you. We do, for instance, all the EV chargers for electric vehicle chargers for Shell Recharge is the name of the company. You see them all around the place, especially you've got the AC chargers, but you've also got the DC chargers, the rapid chargers. And we make a hardware router that's in those DC chargers with the connectivity. But the thing is that they can make that unit in one factory in Vietnam as a single product SKU and ship it around the world, and it just connects. Well, the cost of not having to have more than one factory or more than one manufacturing line in one factory is 10,000 times greater than the cost of spending on the data. And yet, very few opportunities come to us as an IoT company with hundreds of customers. Very opportunities come to us with an ROI built into the initial request. It normally comes from the product side of saying, how much are your SIMs and how much are your data? So I think as an industry, we definitely need to go through that maturing side. And I know that you're doing that right now because that's a great transition in the area of smart cities and video cameras in VisioSense. You've taken that philosophy forward into your current role. So let's bridge now. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about VisioSense, what they do and what's going on in that space?
So I joined VisioSense beginning of this year. I'm working with a former colleague from Sigfox, with Maxime, who's the CEO of the company. And I discovered a great solution for smart cities, mainly around the smart parking and urban mobility. And on top of that, some what I call mini spin-offs of analytics for retailers, shopping centers, logistics, and warehouses. So we are a French startup that is manufacturing and designing in Europe, which is a major differentiator nowadays.
And nowadays, that's a very topical subject nowadays. Yeah.
Yes, but we see many news about different governments that are forbidding different Chinese manufacturers in their networks.
Yeah.
I don't want to go into the political discussion, of course, but we are designing and manufacturing in Europe an edge AI sensor with 1 or 2 cameras that is analyzing parking places, traffic, is identifying and counting people, objects, and vehicles, is counting people in very dense areas, which is a major challenge. Imagine a concert with 100,000 people and having an accuracy of more than 98% is something absolutely impressive. And we have an AI team that is doing an amazing job on a daily basis. And now all the pressure is on us, the commercial teams, to really scale. But why I think it's that impressive in what we are doing, and it's not just the fact that we are VisioSense, but it's important that we are working in scenarios where the return of investment is very easy to calculate for a municipality. We all, almost all of us probably are drivers. We are driving more or less depending on the country where we are living. For me in Romania, for example, I'm driving quite a lot. In other countries where there is a much more developed public transport, probably it's a little bit less, but still you might need to drive. Now, imagine how good it would be when you go to a meeting to check out all the parkings around that area, see if there is any available parking place, check some historical data and see, okay, tomorrow, in the center of London, historically speaking, was there any available parking place at 11 in the morning? Yes or no? And you see the chances of finding one parking place and also seeing the real-time availability of them. Now, when you put all of this in perspective, you get less traffic because in a normal world, if you see that there is no parking place available and historically there were very low chances of getting a parking place, probably you don't need to drive to that place. So in terms of return of investment, you have less traffic, you have a huge a much better customer experience for your citizens. For you as a driver, you go there much more relaxed. You don't stress yourself with finding a parking place, being late to a meeting. Now, from cost perspective, what we provide versus the cost of paying 1 hour per spot, where in any city in Europe, there are not differences that big. The return of investment for the whole solution for 5 years is in less than 1 month. And I challenge anyone in Europe or even abroad to do this exercise. So when you have a cost of few euros per hour, per day, and an estimation of few hours of parking spaces occupied, 8, 9 hours, and then you look at the cost per parking space to monitor it with an edge AI sensor. So here we don't talk about classic parking sensors where you drill a hole and then you put the sensor and then you calibrate it. And then you need to make sure that you have a good coverage in the area. And then if you do some civil work, you got to unplug it, then replug it, reconfigure it, and all of that. That brings a huge cost. With VisioSense solution, you just have a sensor that is scanning, and in average, it gets 20 to 30 parking places in a city. You have a cost that is 1 digit and a very low one per month. And that cost is being covered by the first few hours. So imagine.
So sorry to cut across you. Let me make sure that I get it and also the listeners get it. Is the ROI, and you mentioned 1 month, that's very impressive. And is that because you get a higher utilization of the parking places if you're the municipality, that you're optimizing? People will go to those spaces because they know they're likely to be available, and therefore the overall occupancy rate across all of your spaces rises up and you get revenue from that. Is that the basis of the ROI?
That's the basis of the ROI. And then this is an action that takes place in the first 6 months mainly. And then you reach a default mode when people are looking for a parking space, they see the availability, they start being used to pay for it. Because most of the municipalities nowadays, they have an issue with the cars that are parking. They pay the first hour and then no one is paying the difference. That's in the ideal scenario when they pay the first hour.
They can't afford the wardens to walk down the street checking and making notes in a notebook, and the use case goes out the window. So people are gaming the system by saying, oh, nobody will check. I'll pay for it. I'll pay for 1, but I'll take up 3.
Yeah, it's a matter of luck in the end. Because you might have a policeman that is driving by.
I was thinking of my apartment in London. It's I don't think I'd gamble on 10 minutes, given how keen they are, but that's a
Yeah.
particular part of London. But in general, yeah, absolutely, people will.
Yeah, you occupy in a more efficient way the parking spaces, and in the same time, make sure that your citizens are paying for it. And then, of course, you can start playing with dynamic pricing, with subscriptions, with anything you want. But as a basis for the first month, or let's say the first year, you make sure that every parking space is generating revenue. And then, of course, we move to the parking spaces for electric vehicles, for disabled people. And then you make sure that they are being used by the right people. So it's digitalizing an asset, because the parking space is also an asset at the end of the day. This brings a lot of revenue for the customer if they are doing the right thing and if they are willing to listen. And if you, as a supplier, are doing a very transparent job for them in showing them everything from expense to maintenance costs, because those are also important, revenue that they can generate from that parking space. I even had discussions with mayors that say, wow, it's that fast, the return of investment. Super. So in that case, I can even decrease the cost because I still make enough money. So I can decrease the cost of the parking. People will like me more, and I will still make a lot of money for the municipality. And then I can reinvest them in schools, hospitals, public parks, and everything. Yes, it's that easy. Of course, public sector is never easy. So I don't want your listeners to believe that, yeah, we go tomorrow and in 1 month we sell. No, it takes a lot of time, a lot of work. But that's the beauty of IoT, I think, at the end of the day. And that's coming from an IoT addict. You work, but you have a huge value for everyone involved in this picture.
All right. So you need a camera. You mentioned that.
You need a sensor.
A
Camera
sensor,
for
a
me,
sensor with a camera attached. So where does the camera go? Who puts it up? Does it need to go up a tree, or how does it work?
We provide the full solution. Imagine the camera associated with your own eyes. Whatever the camera see is it's that information that the device is processing. So we put it on street lights, we put it on buildings, we put it on billboards, we put it basically in every possible place above 4 to 5 meters, let's say. We start scanning the area based on the products that we define that need to work in that specific area. And then it simply works. Lifetime up to 10 years. So no issue about that.
And what role does AI play in this solution?
The AI plays a major role, and that's why I'm so happy for being able to be at the right time available for VisioSense and to be part of the team, because I feel mixing AI with IoT, it's something that is the future probably for our industry. I don't want to say it's the game changer, but it's the future because it combines two great topics. So the AI comes in place when we analyze the data, and we analyze it in the device. So we don't store any video, we don't store any picture, we don't send any data to any clouds. We analyze it and then provide the information. Everything is done with the lowest possible cost because we send few kilobytes. The only megabytes that we are using is when we are doing some firmware updates. But besides that, the traffic is very low, even though we are using a classic 4G connection. So here we are not even talking about low power wide area networks. No, a classic 4G connection. And we analyze the data with our AI models in the device. And then to the customer, we just send the relevant information, occupied or available, in the increment when we count people or vehicles, or the number of people in major gatherings. And also, I was saying earlier about the spin-offs and the way we use. We are constantly challenged by our partners and our customers, and we've developed new products based on our core competencies. And nowadays, we are able to replicate what we are doing for a car. We do it in the same time for a warehouse, and we monitor the time spent by a truck to load the goods and to leave. And this way, it's a major improvement in the logistical process for warehouses and logistic companies. And we are doing the same type of information for retail and for shopping centers. With our sensors, you get the full flow of the people in a very privacy-oriented way, because we are fully GDPR compliant. We don't see faces, we don't deliver gender information, nothing like that. We just do the basic information, but the most relevant one in the most private way possible, because privacy nowadays, it's a topic and it becomes a more and more discussed topic by European Union and by everyone. And we want to make sure that the products that we are delivering are respecting the people's privacy and are delivering a huge value to them. And so far, I think we did a great job.
I was just wondering, listening to you, I'm not familiar with the situation in Bucharest, but if I compare it to London, and not just London actually, because London's always different to everywhere else, but a lot of smaller towns, let's say, around the UK, they're very concerned about the death of the high street with Amazon. And I don't know how advanced Amazon is you operate all over Europe, so you just happen to be based in Romania, but you fly to work.
Yes.
And your office is in Paris. That's something I've flown to work for about half my career. But in general, I'm wondering if there's a link to not just revenue generation for the municipality, but also to a societal link in terms of protecting the high street. Because what's happening certainly over here, where there are Amazon Prime vans everywhere, and Amazon's a customer, full disclaimer, Amazon's a customer of ours, and we do the EV charging for the Prime vans, and we do the automatic door opening for Prime, which I've covered on a previous podcast. But actually, the more that Amazon grows, the less people obviously go to the high street. And it's not just that, it's the fact that it's such a pain in the butt going to the high street, certainly in a small, crowded place. It's not like the shopping malls that I was recently on holiday in the US, massive shopping malls with huge car parks where you can have 5,000 cars. It's not like that on some of these high streets. And if parking is a pain to park and you get there and you can't park, the next time I'll just click and have it delivered on Amazon Prime. So do you find that that's a factor yet or not really? Is it primarily around the revenue generation / redistribution of the money to other initiatives? Or are people saying to you, this is an important thing to do for society to preserve the nature of the community around where the shops are, where the parking is needed?
In our ideal world, I'm getting back to my quote about labels when I said that everybody wants to save the planet. There are many people that are concerned about the non-revenue things, but at the end of the day, it's all about money somehow that is generating, that is saved,
About money. Yeah.
but I think the whole experience is also important for customers because take, for example, the airport parkings, the long stay parkings. In theory, if you would talk to them about VisioSense or other players like us, because we are not the only ones, but if you are saying, guys, let's try to digitalize what you are doing there, they will say, yeah, we already have customers. People are already paying 17 pounds per day. It's a good business. Why would we invest? And the answer is pretty simple, because you have a parking space with 5,000 spaces and only 20 of them are available. When your customer is paying 17 pounds per day, I think he would be more than happy to see where he needs exactly to go so that he would make sure that they are not losing their flight because they are circling around just to find that specific parking space. So at the end of the day, it is about money, but it's more about the customer experience, the experience that you provide to a customer, to a citizen. So there is a strong link between that. Most people are saying about the experience. Of course, there are some that just look at the dollar sign and that's it.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. VisioSense, smart cities. So you mentioned car parks, you mentioned parking. Maybe one last question in terms of the sort of things that you're seeing. What's the most unusual? Is there an example of an unusual use case that you've seen where somebody said, "Could you do this?" and you hadn't thought about it? Can you? What's
There are
many
many
things you've been presented with?
There are many examples, and I think the strange examples are coming mostly from the false idea that the AI can solve everything. So I would say the craziest talk that I had about these solutions is being able to count every material on a construction site. And I said, okay, but can we define, let's say, the number of items that you are using? Yeah, we have about 20,000 items that are being stored in most of this area, and they are one like that, one of that type, one of that type, and they are all thrown there. And can you count all of them? And I was like, man, okay, I would love to do that, but unfortunately, we are far away. But I like to be challenged, and I'm the one that is challenging a lot my AI team, but in the use cases that are close to reality. So not the ones that are impossible to solve, but one very interesting use cases and link to this green approach that we have, at least mainly in Europe, but probably in other places also.
Yes.
We are developing now a new AI model for a partner where we look at the wheel loaders that are being used in recycling plants, and we are helping them count and estimate the type of recyclable garbage that it's in that specific plant and the activity, so they can improve their processes and generate more revenue from this operational flow by making sure that the operators from every specific waste plant are doing a better job and are doing let's say, the right flows in the plant, so their work can be efficient. So now we are developing a new AI model that is not only counting a wheel loader entering or exiting a premise, but it's also looking if the front of the wheel loader is up or down, meaning if it has garbage or not, and how many times it crossed, anticipate the number of tons, because you could estimate it based on the papers that you have, based on the visual that you see, but it's not a precise estimation there. And this is the type of use case that I like to do because it's closer to reality. Of course, it takes time to be developed. Also, another one, you mentioned some names from your current experience. Some of them are also in our prospect list or in our pipe, let's say. But it's great to be able also, from logistical perspective, not only to check the time spent by a truck when loading, but also imagine putting our sensor on the other side inside the warehouse and count every returnable transport that is being loaded in the truck. So I'm an operator. I know that I gotta load 17 pallets in a truck, and I load the first one, the second one, the third one. When I load the 17 one, I get a green light, and then I can say to the driver, okay, you are good to go. This doesn't mean that with our solution, we know exactly what goods are there, because the goods are connected by the smart label that we are talking about earlier to know exactly if that precise good is on the right pallet. But in terms of operational processes in a warehouse, it's very important that the guy is moving very fast and knows exactly what he's being doing. Because if the truck is leaving and it has -1 pallet, then the costs are huge to get it back, load it again, and send it back on the field. So these are the types of use cases that are not off the shelf. Our AI model is not trained to do them, but my team can train it very fast to detect that. But we gotta be very realistic. The AI is not solving everything in the world. Some of the people talk to the ChatGPT nowadays like it's their best friend. Sometimes it provides good enough information. There are rumors that
Sometimes
provides whatever you want.
Yeah.
But when we look from B2B perspective, the AI is very good, but it needs to be somehow trained into a specific direction.
So a closing comment from me. It is interesting. I've been doing this podcast for 4 years, and I would say for 3 years, we didn't talk about AI, maybe a little bit more than 3 years, even though the industry was talking about AI, but nobody ever came on to the pod saying we're using AI. And in the last 6 months, that's totally changed. And we've had some people who have then said, look, it sounds obvious, but AI is only as good as the data you feed it. And the question is, where do you get the data from? It isn't just scraping the company's records to find your internal documents. It's the data from things that you would need. And we had a guy from Volvo on, I guess 2 weeks ago, talking about Volvo's 150 factories and millions of things they want to connect, basically bits of machinery to keep the production lines flowing and to never do proactive, preemptive maintenance so the manufacturing lines never stop. But the point being is that is a problem that it can only be solved by collecting data from everything. And to your point, using different protocols, different technologies to get the data, because you're talking about lots of different things that were made by lots of different companies, and there isn't one solution that fits all. So it's always going to be a patchwork quilt of different technologies. But what we are now seeing, and I think in general, we are now seeing a growing realization that there's another type of benefit for AI, and you've mentioned it, and the guy from Volvo 2 weeks ago mentioned it. There's another type of AI, which is AI in the industrial sense, the AI with data from things, which hasn't had anywhere near the amount of publicity that AI has had in other areas. Lawyers are going to lose their jobs because AI can read the contracts better. We're going to be able to do healthcare better. There's going to be mass unemployment for graduates when they leave because the jobs they used to do in the first 2-3 years are all now done by AI. But now we're starting to see, it's only just, I would say you could argue it's always been there, but I think it's starting to get much more airtime, if you like. People saying the real opportunity for AI, because there are many more things than there are people in the world. The real benefit of AI will be getting the IoT data into AI, as opposed to the question we were asking 9 months ago is what's the use case for AI in IoT? Actually, it's how is AI improved by getting data about things into AI. And then there's a whole series of benefits which are very tangible. It comes back to your ROI point. It's really hard to be tangible about the return on AI in an office environment. It's efficiency, but most of the people are still there. But in a university environment, there is no benefit. They just use it to cheat on their exams. Is how universities think about it. But in the industrial side, there is linking to the ROI. If you have an ROI-based approach and you can actually do things more efficiently, whether it's be proactive maintenance or preemptive firmware updates, as you said, or optimization of car park spaces for drivers, or making sure you get most revenue from parking spaces on the street. It seems like there is a whole new awareness of an even bigger benefit of AI when you think about the billions of things, and back to your point about smart labels, potentially trillions of things in the future that you'll be able to get data from. And you can get data from trillions of things, and with the AI models getting better at between 5 and 10x per year, which is an incredible number, then suddenly there's this whole new set of benefits and opportunities and use cases, probably companies that we haven't even thought about because we were never able to connect those two things together. We were never able to connect. We were just collecting basic telemetry data from things, if you like, or usage data. But now, with all the things we can connect, it does seem like each guest we have here on the podcast is now saying, you kept on using the phrase, the AI models that we are developing for our customers. And that we're seeing a lot of that right now. And I don't think it's the mainstream media right now, but I think it will do because there's a lot of people working on some very exciting projects around feeding the data from things into AI models. And that's going to be a very exciting few years, of which you're one of the companies doing just that.
Yeah, and I also saw a trend in the last weeks or months of people praising the death of IoT because now we have AI. And I cannot
Really?
for me, it's something really stupid. If you say something like that, it means you really don't understand anything.
Don't get it.
And I remember you were asking me, the first question was about Sigfox, how it was. I remember in theory, a competitor of Sigfox that was very happy that the company will die. And I was trying to explain to him, man, it's not important that you are building LoRaWAN base stations and a competitor technology might die, because it's an issue for the whole industry. If tomorrow Sigfox disappears, you will sell less base stations because people will lose the trust in IoT. Also, same stupid approach nowadays with AI will kill IoT and AI will be there and the IoT is dying. No, guys, AI without IoT is useless.
That's what I'm saying.
The IoT is the one that is generating all the data to train the AI. It's not like tens of billions of people that are constantly pushing data. We feed all the AI models, at least in the B2B and industry scenarios, we feed them with data coming from connected devices. Those connected devices are the basis of the IoT nowadays. So let's not try to shift this also into a technology fight, and let's accept and understand that AI plus IoT is the future. The IoT was the start. It was the game changer for sure. Some of us did a good job. Some of us, I don't want to say a bad job because I don't think anyone has done a bad job in IoT. Some could have done a better one, let's say. But at the end of the day, these whole industries will reach their highest potentials by combining the AI and the IoT. In few years, we will not think about, should I connect my beer keg to get it back faster and sell more beer? No, it's going to be what kind of decision my new AI model will take so I can improve. You will start applying some numbers and say, okay, I have an objective of 2x revenue increase in the next 3 years. What do I need to do? And then you will train your AI model based on your specific business to take some decisions for you and your teams. So AI plus IoT are here to stay and are here to change our lives, both in private and professional way.
Absolutely. And it's a great place to finish. Silvio, the purpose of IoT is going to be to get the data, your data, not public data, your data that you can use to train your IoT model, your AI model that will optimize your business and make it more efficient. And that is why IoT has to be very high up on people's priority lists, because it will get you the data to train the AI model in a way that generic AI models won't help you, because they're not being trained on your data other than some documents that you have. They're mainly based on publicly available data. So I think that's going to be a theme of the podcast for some time to come. And it is interesting how it's changed in the last 6 to 8 months in the space. Listen, we could talk for a long time, but we are at the end. I wanted just to thank you for joining. I know you reached out, said you'd love to be on the pod. I really appreciate that. And if people want to contact you, what do they do? Do they go to VisioSense? What do they do?
I think VisioSense.com in terms of VisioSense products and services. My LinkedIn profile is active, is up to date. I'm a very social oriented person and I answer very fast to any kind of request. And like I'm saying to everyone, there is no dumb question. There is that question that hasn't been addressed. So challenge me with any topic you want, guys, about IoT. I'm an IoT addict and I'm happy to help.
Okay. And it's Silvio Neghina, Neghina. VisioSense is VIZIO Sense, SENSE. Silvio, thank you very much for being on the podcast. Good to talk to you. Good luck with the commute to and from Paris and all around the place. And I hope you still find time to keep playing the tennis at that high level.
Thank you very much for having me here and cheers to everyone.